Thank you again for being with us here today, and let's get started. We have a very special topic for you today as we bring to you some of our transport partners to give an overview of the new normal, as they say, and provide some advice on how you can continuously support your readers and customers as they start to travel. Today, we have Deutsche Bahn, Transavia, and Pink Bus, and Shane Meyer, our head of partnerships, who will introduce them more in a bit later. Great. I hope you're excited for today's session. Without further ado, here is Shane to jumpstart our session. See you in a bit during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing really well. I'm super happy to be here and really excited to moderate this panel. This is our first time actually bringing together planes, trains, and automobiles, or buses. And I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion together. Before we dive into that discussion, I wanted to share and sort of prime the discussion a little bit of research that GetYourGuide did. Our marketing team set out to understand our customers a little bit better in this context in the moment, find out what was on their minds and how they're thinking about travel. And I wanted to bring out 3 slides and 3 data points that I think are especially telling about the moment right now. So let's go to the first one, Erica. The first one is that over 50% of people are intending to travel locally or domestically. This is obviously kind of maybe obvious to some people. I think a lot of us know this because we're seeing it in our business. GetYourGuide certainly is seeing an uptick in regional travel, but it's nice to see this actually put to numbers and hear from customers themselves. What also stands out is more Americans are planning to travel domestically. This is, of course, because it's even harder to travel internationally in the US and because of the restrictions to travel for most Americans. But besides the US, all European countries, we saw the same trend where they plan to travel within their region. And let's go to the next slide. And when we dig in a little further, we see not only are people planning to travel domestically generally, they're really going to stick close to home. They plan to travel a lot in their city themselves, so that's the top line there. And then if it's not going to be in their city, the second is going to be in a nearby city. The third line is, again, just domestic generally. That was as the other slide had. And then you see international is very low. And where it's international, it's going to be nearby, short haul. So all of these statistics speak to the moment. People continue to want to travel. They're just going to be doing it differently, not as far, more regional travel. So that sort of sets the scene for our discussion today. And we're really happy to have our panelists join us. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves each and tell us if they traveled this summer. That's one thing on everyone's mind, what happened this summer, how they traveled, where they went. I'd love to hear from them. Our first panelist is Tino Engelman. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed a slide. Thank you, Erica. Let's go back one. That's even more interesting for this discussion. Thank you, Erica, which is to point out that we also asked people how they wanted to travel. And not surprisingly, there's a lot of concern with traveling on planes and trains. Cars gets the benefit of the moment. Traveling in your own bubble is very popular these days. Cruise ships, not surprisingly, very low interest, given all the news we've seen. And unfortunately, buses, Tino, unfortunately, even more impacted it looks than planes and trains. I assume because also being in a closed environment for even longer. Although I'd love to hear what you are hearing from customers themselves. So this is just, again, the research we did. And we'll move to the next slide. Let me introduce everyone who's on our panel. First is Tino Engelman, the founder of Pink Bus. We have Lisa Roth, who's strategic CRM for Deutsche Bahn, and Sam Gertzen, strategic partner manager at Transavia. So let me start with you, Tino. How was your summer? Did you travel? How did you get there?
Yeah, actually, thank you very much to be part of the panel discussion. I just returned from holiday yesterday, actually, and I was with my family in Austria, in the mountains, and we traveled there by car. So I can underline your study. And yeah, that was my summer holiday, actually.
I hope you had a nice trip.
Yeah, it was quite nice. So my daughter is just 9 months, but it was, despite it was a good travel and good ride.
Well, somebody on an airplane is happy that there wasn't a 9-month-old crying on the airplane. So it worked out for everyone. Lisa, did you travel this summer? Did you have a good trip?
Yeah, I actually traveled a lot. I think more than other people did probably because of the COVID stuff we are experiencing. I traveled by plane, I traveled by car, and I traveled by train. So I actually did most of the transportation means that we have in Germany. Yeah, I went to Croatia, I traveled within Germany. Yeah, everything that you can imagine basically, but going long haul is not in the portfolio I can offer.
Um, can you tell us briefly how they compared the different options?
You mean for the security stuff or for just in general?
What were your observations? Yeah, in general. I mean, I think people are really probably interested in the experience of what it was like. How crowded was it? Was it strenuous? But what was your experience?
Well, actually, what I experienced is the plane going to Croatia was full up to the last seat. So there was no empty seat at all. We just sat right next to each other, and the check-in process was also very crowded. So yeah, I heard some people having concerns in the plane, just telling, yeah, I'm wearing a mask, but still I'm sitting right next to my neighbor, so probably I will get infected. That's what you hear when you sit in the plane. While sitting in the train is a very different situation where people are not next to each other, so there is a lot more space because not as many people traveled by train in the time when I did as they did by plane. And in the car, obviously, it's what you make of it.
Thank you for the extra information. Really helpful to hear somebody who's been on all of these transportation systems. So that leaves you, Sam. I hope that you also got out and had a little summer holiday.
Indeed, I went to Zakynthos, a Greek island, which would be a little bit difficult with the car or with the bus, I suppose, and with the train. Yeah, I went with Transavia to test our product, to make sure it's safe, to see how that works with a face mask, with the check-in procedures, with all the checks and balances we've put in place. And luckily, some research underlines that we haven't had any infections spreading within a plane until this moment. But indeed, we can underline the findings of your study that that people are scared to fly and rather postpone it for this year to another year once there's more clarity on how this will evolve. But Zakynthos was a brilliant island, so I can assure that there are nice things to do, and you offer some nice tours with GetYourGuide there as well. So
brilliant! I'm glad you went on a GetYourGuide tour, and that was a great hit out the gate. Of you cannot take a train or a plane to some destinations, so airplanes are still going to be very critical. Now that we've heard from you individually about your summer plans, I'd love to hear how business went this summer. We're going to start on the topic. The first topic is insights on domestic and regional travel. And I'm really curious of what patterns are emerging, what you saw this summer. Let's start with you, Sam. What did Transavia see in terms of customers booking, where they're going? Anything that we can tell us about the future as well?
Well, we have to plan ahead pretty well, because we can't put forward a schedule which changes, because there are a lot of EU costs involved. So this has been really important to grasp what the patterns are, and we have found out some clear patterns. One, of course, is that people tend to go to countries they trust in terms of governance, in terms of healthcare systems. So moving more to destinations from a Dutch perspective to Austria, to Germany, Switzerland, but also to countries where infection rates are low, such as Greece. We've seen that once the government changes their perspective on how safe it is in a destination, that immediately bookings drop, really spot on immediately. And we see a trend in terms of the moment when people book. Either they do very last minute, so they are sure that they can go and they book very last minute, or they postpone to very far in the future. where they think, well, the situation might have established, and the period in between is tricky for us. And let's not talk about the averages, because that will
We'll save that
not
for
feel
later.
very good.
Okay. How about you, Lisa? What are we seeing with people riding trains? What is Deutschbahn seeing? Any new trends? What have you learned about customer behavior this summer?
Well, Deutsche Bahn has a very special situation within Germany, because we have like the public transportation system up and running. So we were going throughout the whole COVID time, and we have learned a lot while doing so. So what we've seen is that people are very concerned about getting infections while there are many people. So stations, for example, is a very huge topic for us. So how do we manage to not get the stations too crowded? How do we manage to get people across? How many people are going to sit in their train, in their department where they are sitting, stuff like this. And we also see that people get a lot more disappointed when there is a lot of other people on the train where they are going to. So that's a critical issue for us that we have to manage. But we also profited from the situation, because the domestic travel is, just as you experienced in your study, is going way up. So that's something we can use for our travel purposes, because it's visiting friends and relatives is a big topic now, because you can't go abroad, and Germans love to travel abroad normally. So nowadays the numbers in domestic travels are going way up, and this is something we can use for our marketing campaigns, and we also did so, which was very successful for us.
I want to hear more about that next, but first let's hear Tino. And Tino, I know Pink Bus is new, so you can tell us how much data you've been able to collect so far, but we'd love to hear about how summer went for you.
Yeah, actually, we run down our service with the lockdown end of March, and just started our service end of July. So we waited very long. So our competitor Flixbus started already in end of May, but yeah, we observed the markets and the behavior, and decided to start a bit later. And with the restart, also on selected routes, we noticed that the request was quite high. So I can underline also the statements of Lisa and Sam. So the domestic travel, we also can see is the highest actually, and we also service domestic travel for time being. And we already, but we offered just a 50% capacity. So we offered free neighbor seat. So it was also a big point for our clients. And we had quite far already full booked bus. So it was quite okay.
Well, congratulations on filling a bus as a new company. That's an achievement, yeah. Maybe a difficult one right now. Yeah. Lisa, I want to go back to what you were saying about already pivoting towards regional travel, and I'll follow up with everyone to answer the question, but how is everyone and how are your businesses thinking about capturing the moment and taking advantage of regional travel?
Just as I said, we conducted a very successful marketing campaign. In case you are living in Germany, you might experience it, seeing it on TV or on the bus stations or stuff like this. So we promoted it a lot, and it's basically, just as I said, Germans love to travel abroad, so they know a lot of sites in different countries. So for example, the Chinese Wall. And what our agency basically did is they spotted places in Germany which just look alike. And so they made a campaign out of it, which is you want to see the Chinese Wall? Yes, then you can go to Saxony and see it there. Yeah, and that was very successful. We had very positive feedback about this. So the countries or the country sites the states we promoted are very happy with us promoting them, obviously, because they get tourism involvement over there, and we are very happy because we can offer the routes going there and gain some of the holiday travel, which is basically something that we can emerge on, because bigger parts of what Deutsche Bahn is serving are or were in the past were related to business travel, and now it's switching the other way around because of the domestic travel in holiday times in Germany.
That's super interesting and very clever. So Sam, I'm wondering, does Transavia have anything as clever planned or in the works?
Yeah, I think it looks a little bit like what Lisa said. We have launched Transavia Nearby, which is a little bit counterintuitive because we fly to far places, but we have launched a platform, an affiliate platform, where we promote tours closer to home, because we know we cannot convince people to fly if they really don't want to. So we have offered some really nice Get Your Guide tours in the Netherlands or in France, because Transavia is from Air France and from KLM. So we are operating in those two countries. So I think that is very successful. It's not our core business, of course. What is more interesting in the long term is that we will get some support from the government via the Air France KLM group with a state loan, and the pressure to promote regional travel and more greener forms of transport forces us to work together with train companies, with bus companies, and to make what we call virtual interlines. These are connections between train and flight, or bus and flight, or train to bus. And we are investing in that as well. We have a platform, and there's a company in Berlin called Omio. I'm pretty sure you are aware
They're
of
a partner
that
of ours.
company. Yeah,
A good partner.
Yeah, and these companies, I think, in 5 years it will be much more common to combine flight with train, and to make more durable and green choices in the future with regional travel and with multimodal transport. So we are happy to join that. And maybe you wouldn't assume that from an airline, but we actually do.
That's super cool. I love the creative thinking here, and I love that out of this tragedy we might get some progress in terms of how we travel, being greener, having more options. So Tino, how does that sit with you? Are you ready to transfer somebody onto an airplane off the bus, or vice versa? And coming back to the topic of how you're planning to pivot the business to cater towards regional travel, what are you working on?
So we decided actually first to switch to 100% climate neutral travel. So I guess we're the first transportation who's doing this for 100%. So we established this in end of July, and actually we founded in July 2019. So we are quite young startup, and we just offer domestic routes and no international routes so far. And because of that, so we just open up Berlin and Munich as main routes in July, and now looking for new routes, probably shorter routes where people don't have to sit so long in this closed environment to extend the route network.
Makes sense. And we're talking about this moment, and we use the phrase new normal as if this was a static moment. And the truth is it's changing. We all know that last month looked very different than this month, and we expect the same. So one question I have is, how are you and your teams thinking about phases, if you are? Is there different phases of how travel will work? Are there different phases of how we're going to be dealing with the virus? And if you're thinking about phases, what are the phases? What kind of timeline are you thinking about? And we'll start with you, Tino.
So for the bus sector, it's very interesting, because normally the month August, September, probably also October are with the highest month, and then demand will go down in the winter time, and this is probably a critical phase for us, certainly in times of Corona. So we take a stronger look on this, and then we plan in the second phase when we restart in February, March with a greater route network regionally, domestically. So we think in those two phases and hope that we going to have any pharmacy around March or springtime. So.
And Sam, how about Transavia? What are the ways you're thinking about a timeline here and phases?
Well, in general, IATA expects air travel to be back to normal in 2024. But for holiday travel, we think it's sooner. We've seen it this summer as well, that business travel can be postponed, but don't touch the sacred holiday. So we expect a little bit more recovery. Of course, it will be short haul first, medium haul, and long haul later. We do expect some pressure on the visit friends and relatives market. So nowadays you can't fly to Morocco or to Turkey. We have a lot of people living in Germany, Netherlands, France, which would love to go to those areas to visit friends and family. And we think governments will be, how do you say that, lenient to open those markets sooner than others. But first of all, it will be Europe only. So yeah,
makes sense. And Lisa, how about Deutsche Bahn?
Well, we've already gone through some phases, basically. Where we see that is in campaigning, obviously, because when the COVID started, then we just skipped all the communication towards our customers and only made safety notices and stuff like, what do I do with the ticket I have currently? How do I give that back to Deutsche Bahn and stuff like this? Now we are already going back to more or less normal business, but still we are very much promoting the holiday topic, because that's the thing that is currently ongoing within Germany. So we have experienced the summer holiday just back 2 or 3 weeks. Now the autumn holiday is coming, so there is a lot of holiday in Germany just happening right now. But what we are keen on seeing is how the business sector will develop in the future, because we don't think that it's going to be the same within the next year. Still, we stick to our growth strategy. So we try to emerge to new markets. So for example, getting younger people on Deutsche Bahn who is living in Germany just has seen today that Deutsche Bahn is lowering the prices for the younger people to get them on the train and to get them going there, because we have experienced that they are very price sensitive.
I got excited and then I realized that that's not me anymore, unfortunately, not the demographic. Thank you for bringing up the future. I want to move into the second phase of our conversation, which is about changes and strategy. And we've touched upon this a bit already. And we talked about what we're doing to cater towards regional travel. Are there any other strategic changes that you're making and any other messaging changes? You know, a lot of the people are on the call today, they're online publishers, and they could be really great channels for you to extend your message out. So what is the message you want to send, and what is the strategy changing and going into 2021? And let's stay with you, Lisa.
Yeah, just as I said, Deutsche Bahn is sticking to the growth strategy that we planned also before COVID. That doesn't change anything in our opinion. Still, we think that we have a great opportunity, because we have a climate friendly transportation mean. That is something we want to put forward. Also, we want to say that the travel within the trains is safe. There is a lot of things that we put in place just to put pressure on people wearing the masks, employees in the train controlling that people are wearing the mask, but still having the comfort of traveling, not driving yourself, being able to eat something on the train, all this stuff that you can't do when you're traveling by car. So this is something that we want to put forward in the future.
And Sam, how will airline travel message it and maybe combat, if need be, the train message and the bus message?
Well, I think we are more alike than one would think, because we are all in it together. We like people to meet, to mingle, to travel, and we need to restore the trust at people. First of all, we need to be safe on our own end with disinfection manners, with good procedures, etc. But then we need to convince people that it's okay to travel again. And I think that's also a message to the publishers in this meeting. If we want to revamp this industry together, we need to work together to regain that trust.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that trust is also flexibility. We've seen a lot of good developments in terms of giving a trusted feeling if you are able to rebook, or if you have a free of charge cancellation, and those kind of things also help to restore the trust that it's safe to book, and if in somehow the situation changes, you can still postpone your holiday or your plans. So trust and flexibility are key in our strategy.
Yeah, we see the same, and you all know that Get Your Guide is a very flexible cancellation policy now for our customers. Also, almost everything is cancelable till day of for that same reason. So understood. And Tino, how about you? What's the message you really want to put out there to customers? You're muted.
Sorry. Also security and flexibility, of course, are main points. And we started with the strongest hygiene concept, especially in the bus sector. And we made experience that travel is safe with us. And we also have strong controls on board and before travel. And also the bus is the greenest opportunity to travel in Germany. And yeah, I think we have to get the trust back, and we see that the demand is coming back, and yeah, hope the curve is going on.
I hope so too. Let's wrap up the last part of the discussion and talk about learnings. That is something we can really get value out of sharing. So let's start with what did we learn about consumers? What did we learn about how they think about their holidays? And Sam, you said, you know, the holiday's not going away, it's sacrosanct. So tell us more. What have you really learned about how people think about travel and their holidays specifically?
Well, I guess people, well, it's not anything new, but people appreciate freedom, and especially now we are confined in our homes and locked up everywhere. We value freedom, and we see that it's actually already very nice to be outside of our homes, close by. So if we do regional travel or maybe further for some people who can afford it or are daring to go further at this point in time. So yeah. I think that's yeah, that's still something which consumers will value also in the future.
Yeah, I agree. Freedom is not going away as a value, and I certainly feel it when I travel, a feeling of freedom. How about Lisa? What is Deutsche Bahn thinking? What have you learned?
Well, I can just underline what Sam said. I think it's traveling as part of the personal freedom space. That's something that is very, very important to people, and it also gained some of the importance throughout the Corona time, because now that people can't have it, the more they want it, the more they can't have it, the more they want it, obviously. The second thing is the visiting friends and relatives sector has become way more important, because that's something that is that was like you could have it like all the time before Corona. Now it's something very special, because probably your relatives are not living next door, but they are living in another city or something like this, and you can't visit them all the time. So that's something very special that people experience, and they learn to appreciate the domestic area and also the own country. Just as I said, Germans love to travel abroad, so now they experience that there are some nice sites in Germany also, and they don't have to go to, I don't know, Thailand or Greece or wherever to see something very special. Yeah, that's something that we have learned. And the third thing is safety is way more important than before, and people expect the operators to push that through. So they don't expect that they have to take care of the safety manners and all this stuff behind the hygiene concepts, the wearing masks and stuff like this, but they expect that the operators take care of everybody doing this. Yeah, and that's something we will have to push forward in the future even more than we do now.
Really interesting, really useful. And Tino, how about you? Last word on what have you learned about customers this year?
Yeah, so in special in this times, so our main target group is are young people, so Generation Z and Y. So they love to see friends and family, and we are happy to be a part of. Yeah, that we can support to travel cheap and safe. Also as Deutsche Bahn or other competitors of us. And yeah, so this is the main point I can add.
Cool. I had two more questions, but I want to combine them. And I want to ask, what was the biggest learning for 2020? And what's the biggest change you've made? And whoever's ready to go first, you can volunteer yourself. Biggest learning and biggest change you've made.
Well,
Yeah, you look ready.
well, one of the biggest learning is that having the basics right as a company is very important. We have put a lot of value on our cost management as a low cost carrier, and we haven't engaged in any loans, which means that during this time we can refund customers, we can cancel trips, and we can still have an organization not on the brink of bankruptcy, but with a forward, with an eye forward. So that's a learning that was actually a good thing which we had in place. A bad thing which we've learned is that we've been going very fast. We have launched a lot of new concepts like Transavia Nearby, like Transavia Holidays, where you can now book a package travel at an airline, so at the source. But we have left too much MVP experiments in hindsight, where we did not finish the last 20% of what we've built, and once there's a crisis and you have to go in reverse with 120 k's an hour, those small things we did not wrap up are now becoming very huge problems, which take us a lot of time to fix. So I think decency in terms of cash and in terms of how we build our products is one of the most important learnings we've encountered.
Yeah, that's really important lesson, right? Keep your house in order. You never know what crisis is coming, and now we're going through it. So really interesting perspective. Tino or Lisa, who would like to go next?
I can start. So we have mentioned, or we have noticed, to react fast. So being agile, and you never know what happened in 2 weeks, or is there a next lockdown, or I don't know. So you have to react very quickly, and always communicate very transparent and with a face to a client. So yeah, even be available also. And it's very important. We have noticed, and probably the biggest learning, and what we have noticed also is probably flexibility in the entire industry, so that you can cancel, very spontaneously, that you can bringing back the trust with those vehicles. So I guess it's very important.
We're coming back to fundamentals. Keep your house in order, treat your customers with respect, and meet their needs. I think this is a great come back to the basics. Lisa, did you also come back to the basics, or did you learn something else?
Yeah, I can add a third one, which is be prepared. So always have in mind that such risks are out there, that such things can happen, that automation is a very huge topic, which helps you a lot in treating your customers respectfully when they have severe needs. So basically having the processes in such a way that that the severe topics can be treated by a person, and all the other topics can be treated by a machine, where you don't need the emotional sector being involved. So this is something we learned, and also the fast decisioning is something that every company needs, because, for example, we are a very huge company. We have the group involved, and then you have 30 people that normally talk about a decision, and that's something that we had to skip while this crisis. And we had to learn very fast how to take decisions in maximum speed, basically.
Wow. Super interesting. You know, I wish that we didn't have to look for silver linings, but that's what we can do, is take all the learnings we get from this moment. They make us stronger businesses and stronger people. Thank you for indulging me with all my questions. Now we can open it up to the larger group for questions. Erica, talk us through here. How do we field these questions?
Yes, I think our partners are still thinking what to ask our panelists. But yeah, so to our participants, feel free to ask any of your burning questions to our panelists today. Again, this is a great opportunity for you to ask anything that you have for our transportation partners. I think this is a very unique time to say, ask whatever. And we'll be more than happy to answer it. If you have a specific question to a panelist, feel free to just directly ask them, and we will address it to them. So we can wait a few seconds, minutes for them to ask.
While we're doing that, what I thought I could do is open it up for our panelists to ask each other questions, because I am sure that a train provider would love to know what's going on in the inner workings of a plane provider and a bus provider. So let's, if you guys have a question for each other, this is a great time to do that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
There are plenty questions to ask each other. I saw one in the chat coming in as well, but I'm wondering, Tino and Lisa, are you exploring as a company to make use of the digital technologies to couple flights with train or bus or other means of transport with each other, or are those conversations not going on in your companies? At our side, there are a lot of those conversations going on, but I'm really wondering how that is on your end.
Well, we already have that kind of linkage between, for example, Deutsche Lufthansa and Deutsche Bahn. So the train to plane business is already there. We have some tickets that already underlie this. The bus sector and the train sector are very much alike. So we have very much the same routes. That's a difficult topic, obviously, for both of us. So partnering up could only be for certain areas, I think. But the plane sector is definitely something that we're looking into.
For us, we are too small actually for time being to partnering with other companies. So we are focusing on winning certain routes, especially to our big competitor or competitors, and probably in 2021, 22, this could be very interesting for us. And yeah, so
I think that's a Freudian slip when you said competitor. But we'll let it slide. Arno has a question. Erica, do you want to take questions, or shall I read them out?
I can do it. Thank you. So our first question is for Arno, which I think is very important to our panelists, and of course, Shane. How will this crisis influence travel prices for consumers, which I guess is the biggest question right now, right? Will it really skyrocket, or will it maintain to its original prices, or go down?
Great question.
That's a very good question, and it really depends on who you ask it. But generally, people think, oh, we have to make flying cheap and lure in people to travel. But the thing is, if people don't trust to travel, you will not convince them with lowering your price, thereby making a very big hit on your yield. So what we have been doing actually is keeping prices on a steady level, because people who want to go still want to pay for it. So I hear a lot of questions from partners to me saying, hey, why aren't you lowering prices? We would expect you to lower prices, but actually we make a deliberate decision not to at this moment. That can change.
Lisa or Tino, like.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the demand and on the specific route and on the specific segment you have a look at. I just said that we are lowering the prices for the younger segment in order to get them to the train. But still, there is some routes that we are offering that are currently very much demanded. So, for example, the typical holiday routes going into the mountains, going into the seaside, stuff like this. This is something that we will not lower the prices because there's just so much demand speaking of corona times that it's not that it doesn't make sense for us to do so, but still there are some segments and some routes that really make sense to lower the prices. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we stick to our prices actually, but we can't lower it because our bus partners cover most of the costs, and they also lost their revenue stream. They also lost their revenue streams, and it's not possible to give them more costs. And so, yeah, we stick to the prices, still very cheap. And we have some stomach actually with the new campaign of Deutsche Bahn. So we had a lot of press discussion today because this is a subventionation of the government. What is behind that? And yeah, it's a bit difficult, but another topic.
I'm glad the gloves are coming off finally.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Arno. The next question is for us, Shane. I hope you can support me on this. With more and more large partners like Transavia and DB at GetYourGuide, the revenue of the smaller content affiliates is seriously under pressure. When does GetYourGuide introduce the conversion attribution?
Okay. So there are definitely two questions here, and I'll start with the first one. And I will argue with the premise a little bit. It sounds like the premise is that there's a lot of competition between our smaller affiliates and our larger enterprise partners, like trains and planes. But I will tell you that the data doesn't really show that picture. What we see is that for a lot of these channels, especially our transport providers, people come really directly from them. So how somebody chooses their airplane, there's probably a long journey to get to. But once they buy their ticket, when our affiliate partner shows GetYourGuide, people book there, and they're not doing a lot of other shopping around. And we've done some actual research on this. So those channels are really not competing with our online publishers. The traffic that our publishers get come from a lot of SEO. Maybe there's other ways you're driving traffic. But they seem to be fairly different channels for consumers. So I don't think you should assume that you're in competition with these guys. But the second question about when we're going to introduce the new conversion attribution, I think if Dennis is on later, he might have more details. But what I can tell you is it's a work in progress. We are not entering this lightly. We're looking at exactly how this is going to impact our partners, how we roll this out. And I don't think that we have a tight timeline on it yet.
Definitely working on it. Thank you, Shane. Thank you also, Vincent, for your question. If you have any more clarification on that, please feel free. We're still here. A question from Thomas. Hi, Thomas. To our panelists. In talking about travel, there has been very little mention of seasonality, something that does affect travel in Europe. As a publisher, I am interested to know what thinking there is for travel in and around Europe this autumn and winter. That's very interesting. I'm very curious as well. Who wants to start? Lisa, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. I think it will basically stay the same as it was nowadays. In the holiday time, we will have the Christmas seasoning business, obviously, and the friends and relative travel, as it becomes more relevant, will even go up, I think, in Christmas time this year, because people cannot travel to other countries or sites they want to go to. In autumn, at least in Germany, I can't talk throughout whole Europe, but at least in Germany, there is 2 weeks time of holidays in school. So we notice that in numbers going up. Still, we also notice that they are going to the normal sites in Germany. So the seaside or the mountainside are basically the two destinations people are going to, and we expect that this is going on in autumn as well, even if numbers are going to be a bit lower than in the other times.
Yeah, Thank you, Lisa. What are your thoughts, Tino?
Yeah, I can add. As I've mentioned before, so in the bus sector, usually the demand going down in November, half of December, not that much, as Lisa mentioned. So there's Christmas traveling time. This is also a curve going up, but January, February is definitely a bad season usually in the bus sector. But we are very excited to see now how the behavior will be now in current times where mostly domestic travel will be relevant. So yeah, we have to see.
I think as airlines in general, we will push a lot to bus and train companies as of the 15th of September, because then there is a decision of IATA if the slots on the airports are being waived. For airlines, it's very important to maintain slots on an airport. And if we don't have to maintain those slots with a slot waiver, I think a lot of airlines will cancel their flights as of the 15th of September, keeping up only the routes that are profitable. And in the winter, most routes are at a loss. So we'll keep only the main profitable routes, and for other destinations you really need to search for alternatives like trains or buses.
Yeah, but at least we still see a high peak in Christmas. That's still something our online publishers can at least look forward to, for sure. Thanks, Thomas. Our next question is from Stacy. Do you think this crisis has altered the way you'll partner with content providers, and if so, how? Lisa, do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I'm actually thinking.
Okay.
That's a
fair to
good
our
question.
panelists, maybe you don't work with content providers specifically in your role. So if you do and you have an answer, we'd love to hear it. Is anybody working with content providers specifically, directly?
Unfortunately not.
No.
So Stacy, I think we just have the wrong stakeholders for that question.
Yes, but if you have any other questions, Stacy, please feel free. I will also say the same with Theodore, who is a freelance writer. So if you want to shift your question a little bit to our panelists, that will be amazing. But yes, again, we still have a few minutes for you guys to answer your questions to our partners in the webinar today. So please feel free to take advantage of that today.
And if our panelists have anything else they want to add, any thoughts that came out of this conversation, or again, more questions for each other, then this is a great time. And otherwise, we will say goodbye to each other.
Exactly.
Maybe a question to you, Shane. Are you changing the content on the Get Your Guide platform in terms of offering? Are you putting forward different tours, or are you putting forward different terms and conditions? How is that changing on your platform?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Sam. So one of the things that's happened in this crisis is that a lot of doors have opened with suppliers. We are even more relevant to them than ever. For one thing, they need distribution, they need sales, and so they're looking for partners like us who can do that. Secondarily, they have new needs, like being able to ticket, for example, museums, to limit the number of people that are going in at one time. So our phone is sort of ringing off the hook, and we continue to add a lot of new suppliers, which is really exciting. You know, we have something everywhere, so we sort of automatically can pivot to regional travel because instead of searching for a faraway destination, you can first search for something to do in your home area. That said, we will look at our biggest geos like Germany, and we'll double down on our inventory here because we know that Germans are going to want to be traveling more in Germany, so we'll look for more supply there. And then the last part is virtual activities. We did add some at the beginning of the crisis. They're still on the platform, and I think that we've added more to them. But we did make a decision that in our DNA, we're a travel company, which means getting out of the house, and we're not ready to pivot to a virtual model. But I do think that it makes sense that we have some of that inventory there for people, and we'll keep adding to it. I hope that answered the question, Sam. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. Thanks for the question, Sam. A question for you, actually, from Vincent. Can you give us an update on how the flights to the winter sports destinations are currently going for a Dutchman in the Austrian mountains? Would be a nice info, yeah.
Well, the Austrians are not so happy with the Dutch people on the mountains because we don't respect the rules too much. We have not been raised with them. But we fly a lot to Innsbruck and Salzburg. We see winter sport travel picking up because people are forgetting about the summer and planning their winter travel. And it's actually very hard to land a plane in the mountains. You need specific certificates for it, and our pilots have. So I won't expect any changes in the schedule to Austria. Maybe in frequency, but not at all in canceling the route altogether. So so you will still be having us on the mountains. That's a sad message, maybe.
We'll still see each other. Cool, thanks, Sam. Another question for you, Shane. As you mentioned, from Thomas, as you mentioned about virtual activities, do we have any data how successful they were?
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So to be really honest, off the hand, I don't have data in front of me. Anecdotally, what I can say is that I know we did quite well with some partners who really went out the gate and marketed them well. So there was some interest at the beginning. We saw that interest decline over time. At first everyone was looking for something to do in their house, and I think that interest sort of waned pretty quickly. And the other challenge that we did see with them is that the average order value is quite low. It's just hard to charge what we normally do for a virtual experience. So while sales were okay, as far as I know, I don't think that it would really be the kind of business we need and that our partners want to see to earn the commissions you want to earn. So again, it'll still be on the platform, but another reason we're not going to make it our main focus.
Yeah, exactly. We do have 5 minutes left, but if the panelists have any questions still for each other, and Shane, if you still have questions for the panelists, please feel free to do so. In the meantime, that otherwise we can save each other 5 minutes of our lives. Cool. Then maybe Shane, you would like to say a few words as we end the session.
Yeah, I want to thank the panelists so much for joining us and sparing your moment. I know right now our time is really critical, and so for you to give up an hour of your time, even more than that, for GetYourGuide and for our other partners and for each other is really phenomenal. But I think it speaks to how we're all coming together as an industry to support each other. Whether we're on a plane or a train or a bus, we're all coming together to rebuild the tourism industry. And to also support travel, which is, I think, something I really heard in this conversation. Travel is so intrinsic to humanity. It is freedom, and I'm really glad that we can all do our part to bring it back. So thank you so much for your time and all the information you shared. I really mean that.
Great.
Thanks for hosting us.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
For having us.
Thank you so much, everybody, and I'll see you. I'll see the rest of the participants again in 2 weeks. See you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.